Hi, I'm General Victoria Thompson. When I arrived at my son's Air Force Academy graduation ceremony, my husband Michael looked at my dress uniform and laughed in front of our entire family, telling everyone I was playing soldier with fake ribbons from weekend training. What he didn't know was that I had just returned from commanding Pacific Air Forces during a classified crisis. And those fake ribbons.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
Included the Air Force Cross and 4 distinguished flying crosses. When my son's commanding officer spotted me and immediately saluted while announcing, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General Thompson, Commander of Pacific Air Forces," my husband's laughter died and 15 years of his disrespect finally faced the reckoning it deserved.
Marriage to Michael Thompson had always required balancing my Air Force career with his fragile ego. We met 15 years ago when I was a captain at Ramstein Air Base and he was a civilian contractor. Michael seemed supportive of my military ambitions until we married, and his true feelings about having a wife in uniform began surfacing. My rapid promotions from captain to lieutenant colonel coincided with longer deployments and classified assignments I couldn't discuss with Michael. What should have been pride for any military spouse became resentment for my husband, who grew bitter about what he called my boys' club career. Our son Jake was born during my Qatar deployment, and Michael never let me forget he handled delivery and early fatherhood alone. Real mothers don't abandon babies for military adventures, he'd say, ignoring that my deployment pay bought our Colorado Springs house. Michael's resentment crystallized around my inability to share work details. As I moved into intelligence and strategic planning, operational security meant I couldn't discuss missions or locations. Michael interpreted the secrecy as evidence my job was unimportant. If Victoria's work was significant, she'd talk about it like normal people, he'd tell neighbors. The toxicity worsened as Jake showed interest in military service. Michael actively discouraged our son's Air Force aspirations, claiming military careers were for people who couldn't succeed in the real world. When Jake was accepted to the Air Force Academy despite his father's opposition, Michael's bitterness peaked. My promotion to general 3 years ago should have been celebration, but Michael treated it like personal insult. The ceremony at Peterson Space Force Base was closed to family due to security protocols, giving Michael ammunition for his theory that my achievements were fabricated. Victoria can't even prove she's really a general, he told neighbors. Living with someone who openly doubted my professional achievements became increasingly difficult. As commander of the 9th Air Force, I oversaw operations across 3 time zones and managed budgets exceeding most state governments. Yet, I came home to a husband who treated my career like elaborate pretense. Jake thrived at the Air Force Academy despite his father's negativity. He was graduating top 10% of his class with a second lieutenant commission. The ceremony was next week, with our extended family attending, including Michael's parents and siblings who'd absorbed his narrative about my fake military career. Michael's family had always been skeptical of my service, influenced by him and their civilian backgrounds. They viewed my deployments as abandoning family responsibilities and my classified work as pretentious secrecy. Jake's graduation invitation specified family could wear formal attire or military dress uniforms. I planned on wearing my dress blues with full decorations, representing 22 years of service from young pilot to commanding general. My ribbons told stories of deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and classified locations I couldn't name. The weekend before graduation, I returned from a month-long classified assignment coordinating air operations during a crisis that never made public news. The successful resolution earned Joint Chiefs commendations, but I couldn't share details with Michael, who assumed my absence was routine training. As I prepared for Jake's ceremony, I felt familiar weight of family dynamics that made military success feel hollow. I was a general in the United States Air Force responsible for the Pacific Theater air superiority. Yet, I came home to a husband who treated my career like elaborate pretense. The morning of Jake's graduation, I stood before our bedroom mirror, adjusting my dress blue uniform. 22 years of service were represented in the ribbons: the Air Force Cross from Afghanistan, 4 distinguished flying crosses from combat operations, and campaign ribbons from deployments across 3 continents. My 3-star general insignia gleamed on my shoulders. Michael walked in as I fastened my service cap and immediately rolled his eyes. "Really, Victoria? You're going to wear all that to Jake's graduation? It's not about you today." "It's my dress uniform, Michael. This is what Air Force officers wear to formal ceremonies." "Officers," he scoffed. "You mean weekend warriors who collect participation ribbons for showing up." The cruelty hit me, but I remained calm. This was Jake's day, but Michael continued, "I hope you're not planning to embarrass Jake by pretending to be some war hero. His classmates' parents are real professionals, doctors, lawyers, business owners. They'll see through your costume." The drive to Colorado Springs was torture. Michael's parents and sister Karen rode with us, and she spent the trip questioning my fancy ribbons for what she assumed was desk work. "I've never understood why Victoria needs all that hardware," Karen told her parents. "My friend's husband is National Guard, and he only wears 3 ribbons. Victoria's chest looks like a military surplus store exploded." Michael's father added his expertise. "Real heroes didn't advertise their service with flashy decorations. Truly important people were humble." At the academy grounds, Michael immediately pointed out how overdressed I looked compared to other military parents. "Look at that Army colonel," he said loudly. 3 ribbons, maybe 4. That's what normal military service looks like, not whatever Victoria's got going on." Karen nodded. "He looks professional, not like he's trying to win a costume contest." The pre-ceremony gathering was where Michael's behavior hit rock bottom. As we found seats in Falcon Stadium, he began his commentary for anyone within earshot about how I was trying too hard instead of focusing on Jake. "My wife has this need to be the center of attention," he told the family behind us, gesturing at my uniform. "She's wearing more ribbons than a 5-star general, which is mathematically impossible, but Victoria's never let facts stop her." The family looked uncomfortable, but Michael was just starting. When other military parents walked by, he made pointed comments about their appropriately modest uniforms compared to my over-the-top display. "See that Marine, Lieutenant Colonel? That's what real service looks like. Understated, professional. Victoria's collection looks like she ordered everything online." The most painful moment came when Jake's roommates' parents introduced themselves. Colonel James Harrison, a distinguished Air Force pilot, approached wearing his own impressive decorations. Michael immediately launched into his explanation. "Victoria gets carried away with military dress-up," he told Colonel Harrison confidently. "She's convinced she needs to wear every ribbon she's ever earned, even though most are probably just for attendance at routine exercises." Colonel Harrison looked confused, studying my ribbons with a trained eye. His expression shifted to shock as he recognized awards that weren't given for attendance, but for extraordinary combat leadership. "Sir," Colonel Harrison said carefully, "I think there's some misunderstanding about your wife's service record." But Michael was enjoying his perceived validation. "Trust me, Colonel, I've been married to Victoria for 15 years. I know the difference between real military achievement and whatever she's been doing." I sat in mortified silence as my husband continued his assault on my service record, oblivious to the military families around us who understood what my decorations actually represented. The graduation ceremony was a blur of pride and humiliation as I watched Jake cross the stage while Michael continued his commentary about my inappropriate uniform. During intermission, his behavior escalated to loud declarations about my supposed fraudulent military service. "Victoria has this fantasy about being some military hero," Michael announced to parents during the reception. She wears every ribbon in the Air Force catalog to look important, but anyone with real military experience can see through it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A retired Marine general nearby overheard and approached with concern. "Excuse me, sir, are you referring to your wife's service decorations?" General Rodriguez asked, studying my uniform professionally. "Don't get me started," Michael replied, delighted with his audience. "Victoria's been playing dress-up soldier for 15 years, collecting participation ribbons and pretending they represent combat experience. Real military heroes don't advertise their service like walking billboards." General Rodriguez studied my ribbons carefully, his expression growing serious as he recognized their significance. "Sir, with respect, your wife is wearing the Air Force Cross. That's the second highest decoration for valor. It's not awarded for participation." But Michael was too invested in his narrative. "Look, General, I've been married to Victoria for 15 years. I know the difference between real military achievement and whatever desk job she's been doing." Karen supported her brother. "Victoria's always secretive about her work, which makes us think she's embarrassed about having a boring administrative position. Real military officers don't hide what they do." The conversation attracted attention from other military families, recognizing the uncomfortable dynamic. Colonel Harrison returned with several Air Force officers, intrigued by the situation. "Mrs. Thompson," Colonel Harrison said formally, "we're curious about your current assignment. Your ribbons indicate combat leadership at levels most of us have never experienced." Michael intercepted before I could respond. "Don't encourage her, Colonel. Victoria's whole career is built on exaggeration and mystery. She claims she can't discuss classified work, but that's just an excuse for having nothing interesting to share." Michael's mother added her perspective. "Victoria's always put military games ahead of being a proper wife and mother. She missed Jake's birth for a supposed deployment, using military secrecy to avoid family responsibilities." The military officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, witnessing a general officer being publicly humiliated by her family. General Rodriguez attempted once more to educate Michael. "Sir, your wife's Air Force Cross represents extraordinary heroism in combat. The distinguished flying crosses indicate multiple acts of heroism during aerial operations. These aren't participation awards. They represent the highest levels of military service." Michael felt personally attacked. "With respect, General, I think I know my wife better than strangers meeting her for the first time. Victoria's been playing this military hero role our entire marriage, and I'm tired of pretending it's real." The final blow came when Michael spotted a news reporter covering the graduation ceremony. Without consulting me, he approached with an offer to provide commentary about military families. "My wife's over there with enough ribbons to supply a small army," Michael told the reporter, pointing at me. "She's convinced that wearing every decoration makes her look like a real military leader. But those who live with these people know the difference between authentic service and military theater." The reporter, intrigued by family conflict at a military graduation, began interviewing Michael about military spouses who exaggerate their service records for attention. Karen and his parents joined, each contributing observations about my supposed deception. "Victoria's used military secrecy to avoid discussing her real job for 15 years. She wants everyone to think she's some spy, but she's probably just pushing papers." As I watched my husband provide quotes about how military spouses create fantasy careers to feel important, I realized this public humiliation had crossed an uncrossable line. This wasn't marital conflict anymore. It was a direct attack on my integrity and service, witnessed by military colleagues who understood exactly what my decorations meant. That evening in our hotel room, I sat on the bed, still wearing my dress uniform. The woman in the mirror was a lieutenant general in the United States Air Force. Yet her own husband had spent the day publicly calling her a fraud. Michael was in the bathroom, humming cheerfully, apparently satisfied with his performance. "I think that went well today," he called out. "Maybe now you'll understand that all this military costume drama is embarrassing. Did you see how uncomfortable those officers looked?" I felt something break inside me. Not sadness, but cold clarity. Michael wasn't just ignorant. He was willfully determined to believe the worst about my achievements. "Michael," I said quietly, "those officers looked uncomfortable because they know what my decorations represent. They weren't embarrassed for me. They were embarrassed for you." He emerged with his dismissive laugh. "Victoria, please. You can't believe that retired generals were impressed by your participation ribbons." The casual certainty in his voice crystallized years of frustration. This wasn't about his civilian background. This was about fundamental disrespect and his need to diminish my achievements. "You gave an interview to a reporter today," I continued. "You told a journalist that I create fantasy careers. You publicly questioned my integrity in front of our son's graduating class." "Someone needed to provide perspective," Michael replied, loosening his tie with satisfaction. "I was doing everyone a favor." For the first time in our marriage, I looked at Michael with the same assessment skills I used in combat zones. What I saw was someone who had spent 15 years systematically undermining my confidence. "Michael, I need to tell you something." My voice carried the authority I used when briefing Pentagon officials. "I am not playing dress-up. I am not wearing participation ribbons. I am a lieutenant general in the United States Air Force." He started to interrupt, but I continued with command presence. "I command the 9th Air Force, overseeing air operations across 3 time zones. The Air Force Cross was earned during a rescue mission in Afghanistan, where I led a formation through enemy fire to extract 37 soldiers." Michael's expression shifted from condescending amusement to concern, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "Victoria, you don't need to." "I'm not finished," I said, and the steel in my voice made him step back. "The Distinguished Flying Crosses represent 4 separate combat missions under conditions most pilots never face. The classified assignments you've been mocking involve strategic planning requiring security clearances most officers never receive." The authority in my voice seemed to register that this conversation was different. Michael sat down heavily, looking uncertain for the first time since I'd known him. "But you never acted like..." "Like what? Like I deserved your respect? Like I had earned recognition?" I moved to the window. "I've spent 15 years trying to be the wife you wanted. Humble, accommodating, apologetic for having a career that sometimes took precedence over your comfort. But I'm done pretending that my service doesn't matter." The silence stretched as Michael processed what I had told him. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its usual dismissiveness. "If this is true, then why didn't you ever tell me?" "I tried to tell you, Michael. For 15 years, I tried to share my pride in my service. But every time I showed enthusiasm about my career, you treated it as a personal threat." I turned back to face him, seeing doubt in his assumptions for the first time. "Tomorrow morning, I'm making some phone calls. I think it's time you learned exactly who you've been married to." The next morning, I woke with clarity. My marriage couldn't survive Michael's inability to respect my service. But first, he needed to understand what he'd been dismissing for 15 years. My first call was to Major Lisa Chen at Peterson Space Force Base. "Major, I need an unclassified summary of my service record, promotion timeline, available award citations, current command responsibilities." "Ma'am, is this for a security review?" she asked, puzzled. "It's for my husband. He doesn't believe my military service is legitimate." Long pause. "General Thompson, anyone who questions your service record either lacks information or chooses to ignore evidence. Your Afghanistan combat leadership alone makes you one of the most decorated officers in Air Force history." Next, I contacted Colonel Harrison, who'd tried defending my service yesterday. "Colonel Harrison, I need a favor. My husband has been publicly questioning my decorations. I think it would be educational for him to hear from career officers who understand what they represent. General Thompson, he said immediately, I owe you an apology for not intervening more forcefully yesterday. What your husband said wasn't just wrong, it was insulting to every officer who has served under combat conditions. I explained my plan to arrange an informal briefing where Michael could learn about my actual service record. Colonel Harrison offered to bring several officers from Jake's Academy class, including the Marine general who tried correcting Michael's misconceptions. Ma'am, your husband needs to understand that questioning an Air Force Cross's legitimacy isn't just disrespectful to you, it's disrespectful to every service member who has earned valor recognition. My third call was to General Rodriguez, the retired Marine who'd witnessed Michael's behavior. General, I'm requesting your assistance in educating my husband about military decorations and combat awards significance. General Thompson, he replied without hesitation, it would be my honor to help correct the record. What happened yesterday was difficult to witness. Your husband was essentially calling you a liar in front of officers who know your reputation. The plan was straightforward. Colonel Harrison would arrange for military officers to meet with Michael and me that afternoon at the Academy's Officer Club. They would present my unclassified service record, explain my decoration's significance, and answer Michael's questions about military protocol. The goal isn't embarrassing your husband, General Rodriguez explained, but providing accurate information so he can make informed decisions about how to treat you going forward. I spent the morning preparing mentally for what would likely be difficult. Michael had built his marriage perception around assuming I exaggerated my achievements. Learning he'd been wrong for 15 years would require confronting his ignorance about military culture and his willingness to publicly humiliate me rather than trust my integrity. Returning to our hotel room, Michael was reading and seemed surprised seeing me in uniform again. "Are you wearing that to breakfast?" he asked with familiar condescension. "No, Michael, we're meeting with military officers this afternoon who want to discuss my service record with you. They think there might be misunderstandings needing clearing up." His expression shifted from amusement to concern. "Victoria, you don't need bringing other people into our personal business." "It's not between us anymore, Michael. Yesterday, you gave an interview calling me a fraud. You made our business public when you questioned my integrity in front of our son's classmates." I sat down with authority I used briefing subordinates. "This afternoon, you'll hear from career military officers about what my decorations actually represent. You'll learn about missions I've led, operations I've commanded, and responsibility I carry as a 3-star general." Michael looked genuinely worried for the first time since I'd known him. "What exactly are you planning to tell them?" "I'm not planning to tell them anything, Michael. They already know who I am and what I've accomplished. The question is whether you're ready to learn the truth." The Academy's Officer Club felt different that afternoon. Michael seemed nervous, adjusting his tie repeatedly. "Victoria, I don't understand why this is necessary. We could have discussed this privately." "We tried discussing it privately for 15 years, Michael. Yesterday, you made it public." Colonel Harrison arrived with General Rodriguez and 2 other officers in dress uniforms. Their presence filled the room with authority that Michael immediately noticed. "Mr. Thompson," Colonel Harrison began formally, "we're here to address misconceptions about General Thompson's military service record." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "I appreciate your time, but Victoria and I can work out our personal issues without—" "Mr. Thompson," General Rodriguez interrupted with polite firmness, "this stopped being personal when you publicly questioned your wife's military decorations. What you did yesterday was unprecedented in my 40 years of experience." Colonel Harrison opened a folder. "Sir, your wife is Lieutenant General Victoria Thompson, commander of the 9th Air Force. She oversees air operations covering 60% of the United States and commands over 35,000 personnel." Michael's face went pale. "That's impossible. Victoria's never mentioned commanding that many people." "Mr. Thompson," another officer interjected, "your wife can't discuss most operational experience because it remains classified. Her inability to share details is proof of importance, not deception." General Rodriguez leaned forward. "The Air Force Cross your wife wears was earned during Operation Rescue Dawn in Afghanistan. She led a formation through Taliban territory to extract 37 American soldiers who would have been executed without her intervention. Michael looked at me with shock. 37 soldiers? The mission lasted 14 hours under constant enemy fire, Colonel Harrison continued. General Thompson's leadership saved every American life involved. The Air Force Cross is only awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. Her 4 distinguished flying crosses represent separate combat missions with 0 friendly casualties while achieving complete mission success. These are not participation awards, Mr. Thompson. The room fell silent as Michael processed information that contradicted 15 years of assumptions. His confidence had evaporated, replaced by realization that he had been publicly humiliating one of the most senior officers in the Air Force. "I don't understand," Michael said quietly. "If Victoria accomplished all this, why didn't she tell me?" "Just what, sir?" General Rodriguez asked with barely concealed anger. "Your wife tried to share her pride in service for 15 years. You chose to interpret achievements as lies rather than trust her integrity." Colonel Harrison closed the folder. "Mr. Thompson, your wife is one of the most respected general officers in the Air Force. Her strategic thinking influences international security policy. Her leadership has saved thousands of lives." The weight settled over Michael. For the first time in our marriage, he was hearing about my career from people whose expertise he couldn't dismiss. "Gentlemen," I said finally, "I think my husband understands his assumptions were incorrect. The question is what he plans to do with this information." Michael looked around the room at the officers who had dismantled every assumption, then back at me with something approaching recognition. "Victoria," he said barely over a whisper, "I had no idea. I thought you were exaggerating everything. I never imagined you were actually telling the truth, actually deserving respect, actually someone whose achievements you should be proud of." The confrontation was complete. Michael finally understood who he had married and what his behavior revealed about his character. The transformation in Michael's demeanor was immediate and complete. The man who had spent 2 days mocking my fake ribbons now sat in stunned silence as the reality of his 15-year mistake settled over him. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by uncomfortable recognition that he had been humiliating one of the most senior military officers in the United States Air Force. "Victoria," he said quietly after the officers left, his voice trembling, "I don't know what to say. I genuinely believed you were exaggerating everything." "I know what you believed, Michael. You made it clear yesterday when you told a reporter that I create fantasy careers for attention." He winced at his words being reflected back. "How can you forgive me? How can Jake forgive me? I've spent years telling our son that military service was for people who couldn't succeed in the real world, and all this time you were commanding tens of thousands of people?" For the first time in our marriage, Michael was seeing me clearly, and the recognition was painful for him. He was confronting not just his ignorance about military culture, but his willingness to publicly diminish my achievements rather than trust my integrity. "Victoria, the issue isn't just that you misunderstood my job. The issue is that when faced with information you didn't understand, you chose to assume I was lying rather than consider that there might be aspects of military service beyond your civilian experience." He sought forward, hands clasped tightly. "But why didn't you ever tell me specifics? Why couldn't you share details that would have helped me understand?" "Because most of what I do is classified, Michael. I tried for 15 years to convey the importance of my work without violating operational security. Every time I expressed pride in my service, you treated it as a personal threat." The truth was settling over him in waves. I could see him mentally reviewing years of conversations where he had dismissed my achievements, mocked my dedication, and treated my inability to discuss classified operations as evidence of deception rather than professionalism. "The Air Force Cross," he said suddenly, looking at my decoration with something approaching awe. Colonel Harrison said you saved 37 soldiers? You risked your life to save 37 people. It wasn't about risk, Michael. It was about responsibility. Those soldiers were counting on air support. As mission commander, their life was my responsibility. For the first time I'd known him, Michael looked at me with genuine respect rather than tolerant condescension. And I spent yesterday telling strangers that your medals were probably participation trophies? The shame in his voice was obvious, but I felt no satisfaction in his humiliation. This wasn't about revenge or proving him wrong. This was about establishing a new foundation based on mutual respect rather than his need to diminish my achievements. Michael, the issue isn't just that you misunderstood my job. The issue is that when faced with information you didn't understand, you chose to assume I was lying rather than consider that there might be aspects of military service beyond your civilian experience. He sat forward, hands clasped tightly. But why didn't you ever tell me specifics? Why couldn't you share details that would have helped me understand? Because most of what I do is classified, Michael. I tried for 15 years to convey the importance of my work without violating operational security. Every time I expressed pride in my service, you treated it as a personal threat. The weight of choice was entirely on him. For 15 years, I had accommodated his insecurity by downplaying my accomplishments. Those days were over. I want to try, he said finally, his voice steady for the first time since the officers left. I want to learn how to be the husband you deserve, someone who supports your achievements instead of resenting them. It was a start, but only a start. Rebuilding trust after 15 years of fundamental disrespect would require more than good intentions. It would require Michael to confront his own insecurities and develop genuine appreciation for accomplishments he had spent our entire marriage trying to minimize. Then we have work to do, Michael. Both of us. For the first time in our marriage, that work would be based on honesty about who I really was, rather than my willingness to make myself smaller to accommodate his fragile ego.
2 days after the Academy confrontation, I received a call from Pentagon Public Affairs that would complete Michael's education about my military service. Colonel Rebecca Walsh, the Air Force's chief spokesperson, had news that would transform my family's understanding from impressive to historically significant. General Thompson, she said with barely contained excitement, the White House has approved declassification of Operation Steel Eagle. The president wants to use your leadership during that mission as centerpiece for next month's ceremony honoring military women's contributions to national defense. Operation Steel Eagle had been my most significant command in Syria, a coordinated air campaign that prevented what analysts believed would have escalated into full-scale regional war involving Turkey, Iran, and Russia. The operation had been so sensitive that even its existence had been classified for 3 years. Colonel Walsh, what level of declassification are we discussing? My family still doesn't fully understand my service scope. General, the Pentagon is preparing to nominate you for the Congressional Gold Medal based on your combined service record. Operation Steel Eagle is being declassified specifically to support that nomination. Your strategic leadership literally changed Middle Eastern geopolitics. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Michael had been telling reporters I wore fake medals, the Pentagon was preparing to nominate me for one of the nation's highest civilian honors. The gap between my family's perception and reality was even wider than revealed. Colonel Walsh continued with details that made my head spin. Your tactical innovations during Steel Eagle have been incorporated into NATO doctrine. The intelligence networks you established provided critical information that influenced the president's response to recent Iranian aggression. When I shared this with Jake during our first real conversation since graduation, his response was immediate and emotional. Mom, I need to apologize, not just for not defending you when Dad questioned your service, but for believing him when he said military careers were for people who couldn't succeed in civilian life.
The deeper revelations continued when Colonel Walsh sent me the preliminary citation for Congressional Gold Medal nomination. Reading my service record summarized by Pentagon historians was surreal. Lieutenant General Victoria Thompson demonstrated extraordinary strategic leadership across multiple theaters, conducting classified missions that prevented regional conflicts and saved thousands of lives. Michael called that evening after Jake shared the news. His voice was thick with emotion. "Victoria, I've been researching the Congressional Gold Medal. It's the same honor given to George Washington, the Wright brothers, and John Glenn. Less than 150 people in American history have received it." The Pentagon's Public Affairs Office reached out the following week. "General Thompson, we'd like to arrange a hometown hero recognition ceremony in Colorado Springs. Your service record is being partially declassified as part of a broader Defense Department initiative. Would your family be interested in participating in a ceremony including White House representatives?" After years of hiding achievements behind classification levels, the military was finally ready to publicly acknowledge what I had accomplished. My family, who had spent years questioning decorations they thought were fake, would witness the Pentagon and White House officially celebrating my service. The transformation from fake medals to potential Congressional Gold Medal recipient had taken less than a week, but the impact on my family's understanding would last forever. Michael, who had publicly claimed I exaggerated my service, was now learning my achievements exceeded anything he had imagined. "I keep thinking about all the times I rolled my eyes when you couldn't discuss your work. I thought you were being secretive about nothing important. Now I understand you are protecting information that could affect international relations." The most unexpected revelation came when Colonel Walsh called with final details. "General Thompson, the president specifically requested that your family be present when he announces your Congressional Gold Medal nomination. He wants to personally thank your husband and son for the sacrifices military families make." Michael would go from publicly questioning my integrity to shaking hands with the president as recognition for supporting one of America's most decorated female officers. The journey from humiliation to honor would be complete. But more importantly, our family would finally understand the true weight of service they had spent 15 years taking for granted. The White House ceremony took place 6 weeks later in the Rose Garden, with over 300 military leaders, government officials, and family members in attendance. Standing in my dress uniform aside the President of the United States as he announced my Congressional Gold Medal nomination felt surreal after years of having my service questioned by my own husband. Michael sat in the front row with Jake, both wearing their finest suits and expressions of profound pride mixed with lingering shame for their years of misunderstanding. The transformation in Michael's demeanor had been complete since the Academy confrontation. He had spent weeks researching military history, reading about the Congressional Gold Medal recipients, and learning to appreciate achievements he had previously dismissed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president began, his voice carrying clearly across the Rose Garden, "Lieutenant General Victoria Thompson represents the very best of American military leadership. Her strategic innovations have influenced NATO doctrine, her combat leadership has saved countless lives, and her classified operations have literally prevented international conflicts that could have changed the course of world history." Jake sat beside his father with tears streaming down his face, finally understanding that the mother he had grown up with was not just a military officer, but one of the most accomplished leaders in American history. His earlier embarrassment about my uniform at his graduation had been replaced by overwhelming pride in service he was only now beginning to comprehend. The ceremony's most powerful moment came when the president called Michael and Jake to join me on the platform. "Military families sacrifice alongside our service members," he said, placing his hand on Michael's shoulder. "Mr. Thompson, your support has enabled your wife to serve our nation at the highest levels of responsibility. Thank you for your service to America through your dedication to her career." Michael looked stunned as he shook hands with the president, receiving thanks for support he knew he had never actually provided. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He was being honored for sacrifices he had actually resented and achievements he had publicly questioned just weeks earlier. After the ceremony, we attended a reception where Michael had the opportunity to meet other Congressional Gold Medal recipients and their families.
General Colin Powell's widow spoke with Michael about the challenges of military marriages and the importance of supporting classified work even when you couldn't understand its significance. "Your wife's service record is extraordinary," she told Michael with genuine warmth. "The operations she's led have influenced American foreign policy for decades. You should be incredibly proud of what she's accomplished." The most unexpected moment came when the reporter who had interviewed Michael at Jake's graduation approached us at the reception. He had come to apologize and request a follow-up interview about military families and the importance of supporting service members even when their work couldn't be fully disclosed. "Mr. Thompson," the reporter said with obvious embarrassment, "I've spent the past month researching your wife's career after learning about this ceremony. I realize now that our previous interview completely misrepresented her service. Would you be willing to discuss how military families can better support classified work?" Michael's response surprised even me. "I'd be honored to help educate other military families about recognizing and supporting extraordinary service, even when security requirements prevent full disclosure. My ignorance about my wife's achievements nearly cost me the most important relationship in my life." The final resolution came during our flight home to Colorado Springs, when Michael handed me a letter he had written the night before the ceremony. In it, he detailed not just his apology for 15 years of disrespect to her achievements, but his commitment to spending the rest of our marriage supporting my continued service with the enthusiasm and pride he should have shown from the beginning. "Victoria," he said as I finished reading, "I know I can't undo 15 years of treating your achievements like they didn't matter, but I want you to know that everything changes from now. I'm going to spend the rest of our marriage being the husband you always deserved, someone who celebrates your success instead of resenting it." Jake, sitting across the aisle, had been quietly processing everything he had witnessed over the past weeks. "Mom," he said finally, "I want you to know that watching you receive recognition from the president has changed how I think about military service completely. You didn't just serve our country, you helped shape it." The Hometown Hero ceremony in Colorado Springs took place the following month, with our entire community celebrating service they had never fully understood. Michael stood beside me as the mayor presented me with the key to the city, his pride in my achievements now as public as his previous dismissal had been. "My wife is one of the most decorated officers in Air Force history," he told the assembled crowd during his remarks. "For too many years, I failed to understand the significance of her service. I hope other military families can learn from my mistakes and provide the support our service members deserve from the very beginning." The transformation was complete. Michael had evolved from someone who publicly questioned my integrity to someone who actively advocated for military families supporting classified work. Our marriage had been rebuilt on a foundation of genuine respect rather than my willingness to accommodate his insecurity. Most importantly, Jake was beginning his own Air Force career with a clear understanding of what military service could achieve and a father who finally appreciated the sacrifices required for extraordinary accomplishment.
2 years have passed since that transformative weekend at the Air Force Academy, and I'm writing this from my office at the Pentagon, where I now serve as Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Operations. The Congressional Gold Medal ceremony at the White House 18 months ago marked not just recognition of my military service, but the complete healing of my relationship with Michael. Our marriage has been rebuilt on a foundation of genuine mutual respect, rather than my willingness to accommodate his insecurities. Michael has become one of my strongest advocates, speaking regularly at military spouse support groups about the importance of trusting your service members' integrity, even when you can't understand the details of their work. "I spent 15 years questioning my wife's achievements because I didn't recognize that secrecy meant importance, not irrelevance," he tells other military families. The biggest mistake you can make as a military spouse is assuming that classified work means unimportant work. Jake thrives as a second lieutenant at his first assignment, and our relationship has evolved into genuine partnership rather than the careful distance that once characterized our interactions. He often seeks my advice on military leadership decisions, and I've learned to appreciate his fresh perspective on Air Force culture. "Having a 3-star general as a mother used to intimidate me," he jokes during our weekly video calls, "but now I understand that having Victoria Thompson as a mentor is invaluable." Michael and I recently celebrated our 17th wedding anniversary with a ceremony that felt like a second marriage.
We exchanged new vows based on genuine understanding of who we both really are, rather than the assumptions and misconceptions that had defined our early years together. "I promise to support your achievements instead of resenting them," Michael said during our private ceremony. "I promise to trust your integrity even when I don't understand your choices, and to be the partner you deserved from the beginning." My work at the Pentagon continues to influence international security policy, but now my family understands and supports the demands of classified service. They've learned to take pride in achievements they can't fully comprehend, trusting that my inability to share details reflects the significance of the work rather than its absence. The lesson that emerged from our family's journey is that respect isn't something you should have to fight for from the people who claim to love you. True partnership means trusting someone's character even when you don't understand their choices, believing in their achievements even when you can't see all the evidence. Looking back, I realized that Michael's initial skepticism wasn't really about military decorations or career achievements. It was about his failure to trust the integrity of the woman he had married, to believe that the person he claimed to love was worthy of genuine respect and recognition. Now, when I wear my dress uniform to military functions, it represents not just my service to our country, but the hard-won understanding that some relationships are worth fighting for, especially when they're about demanding the respect you've earned through years of sacrifice and dedication that others may never fully understand. The most important victory wasn't the Congressional Gold Medal or the Pentagon assignment. It was building a marriage where love and respect finally coexist, where my achievements are celebrated rather than questioned, and where our family understands that supporting military service sometimes means having faith in accomplishments you're not cleared to know about.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.